excited to be here, and we're going to talk about optimizing weight loss with Slenderiiz, but even more than that, I want you to understand this is transformation. And I look at transformation a little differently than most people do because I'm a physician. And I'm more concerned about your health. Yes, I'd like to see you lose weight, but I'm going to teach you a little bit about the science behind how the Slenderiiz program was developed and why it was developed. And you're going to get an insight, and I can't go to a meeting without seeing people come up with just amazing transformation stories. And I'm going to explain why is that happening, especially with Slenderiiz. And so we're going to just go ahead here and discuss a little bit, because everybody tends to come in to my practice, concerned about weight loss. And, but what we have found in the medical literature, if my patients can lose weight on any diet, if you look at the medical literature, within a year, probably about 85% gain the weight back. If you go out 2 years, 98% gain the weight back and more. And so the question everybody should be asking themselves is, why don't diets work? Well, the main reason diets don't work is they're a short-term solution for a long-term problem. So the connotation is, if my patient comes in and says, "Oh, Dr. Strand, I'm on such and such a diet," and I don't care what it is, but the connotation is, if they're going to be going on a diet, somewhere in the future, most people come off that diet, generally returning to the poor lifestyles that got them into trouble in the beginning, and they gain that weight back. And someone will come in and say, "Well, gee, I kept that weight off for 2 years." And I go, "Well, you didn't keep the weight off for 2 years, it just took you 2 years to gain it back." And so, but I want to share tonight the most important reason diets don't work is they don't really attack and correct the underlying problem that's causing over 85 to 90% of all weight gain, and that's insulin resistance. In other words, because of our poor lifestyles, usually inactivity and the all-American diet, we become slowly less sensitive to our own insulin. And I'm going to share this with you. And we actually go back to about in the 1980s. There's a researcher, Dr. Gerald Ravens out of Stanford, who saw a constellation of problems that occurred with people who became insulin resistant. Well, one of the main ones is they started gaining this unusual amount of weight around their middle. They started seeing their blood pressure going up. Their cholesterol panel, that good HDL cholesterol, was going down, and another fat in the blood, triglycerides, was going up. And then that very bad VLDL cholesterol was really shooting up. But then over time, the blood sugar started to going up, and they had a significant increased risk of both diabetes, getting diabetes, heart disease, or strokes. So I became very interested in this whole program and what was going, especially for my patients, back in 1995. And I actually developed a program, and I've been doing this now for, we're getting close to 30 years, but it works. And there's a reason, and it's based on medical science. And that's what I want to share with you today. See, the dietitians and researchers always go back to a theory of simple sugar versus complex carbohydrates. See, carbohydrates are simply long chains of sugar. And these researchers and dietitians and everybody involved thought, well, the shorter the chain of sugar, the quicker the body would absorb that and raise your blood sugar. The longer the chain of carbohydrates, it would take the body longer time to break that down, and those are called complex carbohydrates. Now, look at this. It's a 1901 theory. Now, it's a theory. There's no evidence. It was just a theory. Well, in 1981, Dr. David Jenkins out of the University of Toronto actually said, let's put this to the test. And so he took his research subjects, his patients, and challenged them, and challenged this conventional wisdom by actually giving them a particular load of carbohydrate and actually measuring the rise in their blood sugar. And he gave this concept, he called it the glycemic index. So to better illustrate that, Here's what he did is he took just a regular glucose, because that's what all carbohydrates become in your bloodstream. It's glucose. And he saw the rise of that glucose, straight glucose, and he saw that, well, gee, we're going to give this a glycemic index of 100 and compare everything else to this. Well, in this example, we'll look at sweet cherries. So he would give the same amount of carbohydrates or, glucose load to the individual, but this time in the form of sweet cherries. And he measured it. And what happened is, of course, he gave the glucose a glycemic index of 100, but the sweet cherries only went up 22% as high as the straight glucose. So he gave it a glycemic index of 22. Now, he studied hundreds, if not thousands, of different carbohydrates. But here's just a simple little bit of illustration and representative foods. Now, you can see here, glucose, he gave a glycemic index of 100. Now, the almighty baked white potato had a glycemic index of 85. Well, cornflakes and all cereals and rices are in the 80s, but here cornflakes are 84. White bread has a glycemic index of 70, but wheat bread, the brown bread, is even worse. It's 71. People say, oh, I'm eating brown bread or whole grain bread. Well, it's still high glycemic. But look at this. Here's table sugar. That's simple sugar. It only had a glycemic index of 61. Well, then look at your fruits. Oh, we can't have fruits. This is hard. Well, look at your peaches. It's 28. Sweet cherries, as I showed you in the illustration, 22. Black beans, 20. So most people agree that any glycemic index, let's say between 50 and 55 or lower, is low glycemic index. Anything between 55 and 70 basically is medium glycemic index. Above 70 is a high glycemic index. Now, why is this important? What are we concerned about with your blood sugar going up? Every one of us, this is just a graph that I show, after you see the black dotted line, every morning you wake up, you have a fasting blood sugar. You haven't eaten all night. You wake up, this is your fasting blood sugar. Then you usually have a high glycemic meal, whether it's a bagel and orange juice or instant oatmeal or, whatever. It is very high glycemic. So the blood sugar rises very, very rapidly. Now, the body must control blood sugar in a very narrow range. So this rapidly rising blood sugar stimulates the release of insulin. Now, insulin's job is to drive that sugar into the cell to either be utilized as energy or stored as fat or glycogen. But what happens is when it rises this fast, you overstimulate your release of insulin. And that blood sugar comes down almost as fast as it went up. But look at here. It drops below the fasting blood sugar into the low blood sugar range, or what we call hypoglycemia. Well, if the body allowed this to keep going down, 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 you not only can get mentally confused, you can get a shaky weakness. You can literally, diabetics know this, go into a seizure or a coma. So this low blood sugar stimulates the release of our stress hormones, the adrenaline, the cortisol, to drive this blood sugar back up to normal. But lo and behold, even though it comes back to normal, now you have high stress hormones floating around in your blood. Well, this sets off an uncontrollable hunger. You have to eat again. It's a natural physiologic response for spiking your blood sugar. And you usually crave another high glycemic meal, and you keep doing this day in and day out, over and over and over again. Well, it's kind of like hollering wolf. What happens is you just keep stimulating insulin, you abuse it, and what happens, you become less sensitive to your own insulin. And that what is one of the reasons that we lead to insulin resistance. In fact, studies at the US and Canada show that children and adults, 80% of the carbs they consume are high glycemic. And we now understand this. So if you now look at the USDA food pyramid, after what I've just shared with you, where do we put sweets and sugars? Oh, it's at the peak because we know sugar is bad. Oh, you can't have sugar. Well, then you have the whole grains, the good fats, all of this. Then you get the vegetables and fruit and all that, and we know that's good. But look at what's at the base of the USDA food pyramid. 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, pasta. Now, that's worse than sugar. And yet we got sugar at the top. This is how the USDA food pyramid should look. It's worse than sugar. We should be eating all those fruits and vegetables, nuts, legumes, whole foods, and good fats and good proteins. So when you look at this, I really believe the medical community, the dietitians of today, have actually created the diabetes obesity epidemic we face today. Now, here's a graph that was brought into me by a pharmaceutical rep trying to sell me a drug, which they do, that's their job. It was called Avandia, but it was a diabetes drug that actually improved insulin sensitivity. But this graph is 25 years in length. So you don't become insulin resistant right away. You have to have poor lifestyles for 10, 15 years, and then whoops, one day you just slip into insulin resistance, which is characterized here by this orange line. And as insulin resistance goes up and you're less sensitive to your own insulin, the body compensates for that by making more insulin. So look at the green line. And then your blood insulin levels go up. And as those blood insulin goes up, then we see the expanding waist size. We see blood pressure going up. We see your lipids, we call it dyslipidemia, but the triglycerides going up and the good HDL cholesterol going down. And as long as these two lines parallel, your blood sugars remain normal. And even today, knowing all this, physicians primarily look at blood sugars. But then eventually the body just can't keep making that much insulin, and your insulin production starts to drop. And then finally, after about 12, 15 years, whoops, there goes that blood sugar up. And this is the area where we diagnose diabetes in our office. And the problem with that is that once you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, your arteries are actually aging about a third faster than they should. So every third year, you just add a fourth year to your birthday because you're aging faster. And by the time you become diabetic, this has been going on 12, 15 years. Studies show us the day I diagnose someone with diabetes in my medical practice, 60% already have major cardiovascular disease. In other words, that's why 80% of my diabetic patients, or anybody's, 80% are going to die prematurely from a cardiovascular event, heart attack, stroke, ruptured aneurysm, maybe amputation, all of this. So that's the concern. So we're too late. We as physicians need to be back here treating people just when they start to develop this insulin resistance. And so this is where we are. But one thing we're focused on tonight in transformation is, why do we gain weight and can't get rid of it in this state? Well, when you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, it was called Syndrome X and the metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance syndrome. Now we're calling it pre-diabetes. But once you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, you no longer can utilize calories normally. A calorie is no longer a calorie. Now, this goes against the weight loss industry's mantra for the last almost 3/4 of a century. In other words, calories in must be less than calories out, or you can't lose weight. It's always based on calories. But in this state, one thing we find out is the muscle becomes insulin resistance first. Now, why is that important, or why is that? Well, the muscle normally takes up 90% of the calories from any meal or snack and utilizes them as energy. Well, when the muscle can't take it up normally, now many of your calories you used to utilize as energy are being diverted to the fat cells of your abdomen. Now, another job insulin has is to take the glucose and actually convert it to fat and then block the release of fat. That is why we refer to insulin as our storage hormone. Well, when you saw in that graph I showed you, insulin levels are high. When your storage hormone is high, you hold on to fat like a sponge holds on to water. And that's why we have such resistance to weight loss. And that's why if you don't correct this, you can lose some weight, boom, you put it back on, put back on more, all of the things we've talked about. And this is the frustration. So when PartnerCo started to look at diets and diet programs, they basically came down, and the scientists and the physicians and everybody who's been involved basically said, why develop another diet program we know is going to fail 98% of the time? I mean, it's a joke. Why go through the frustration? It's an exercise in futility. So Partner Co Slenderiiz program is not a diet. These are healthy lifestyles that happen to have a side effect of weight loss, and I'll explain why. But it's a comprehensive lifestyle program. It's not a diet. And we put up here Slender X and Accelerate is part of it. And I'll explain how this works in detail. But then we can't just take Slenderiiz and Accelerate and expect magic. Now, yeah, your appetite's going to be suppressed, and I'll explain on it. But we need to be eating a healthy diet, one that does not spike your blood sugar. And I'll explain why that's critical. Then we need to get moving. The body must have at least modest aerobic exercise. And I'll explain that. But also, with Slender X and Accelerate, you must be taking nutritional supplementation, and optimals or Tahitian noni juice or moa or limu, and Restorix or a combination. There's a lot of other things you can add to this, but I'll show you the things that are really critical for your success. So let's go back. And I said, well, let's eat in such a way that you don't spike your blood sugar. Well, I didn't show you the kind of turquoise line here, but if you wake up in the morning and you have a veggie omelet with fruit, okay, let's just say that. Well, your blood sugar will go up, but it goes up very, very slowly. Doesn't shoot up. You stimulate insulin, but you don't overstimulate the release of insulin. And yes, your blood sugar will come back down to the fasting blood sugar level. You're going to get hungry again, but I tell my patients and anybody, well, just have another meal or snack that does not spike your blood sugar, and you go through this. And what happens is the medical literature shows you have one meal like that, or you have a Pure Nourish meal replacement, your insulin levels begin to drop. You have another meal, it drops more. Just eating this way improves insulin sensitivity from a specific mechanism. And the other thing is your natural appetite comes down. Now, what we've been calling emotional eating and cravings all these years is really only been the natural physiologic response of spiking your blood sugar. And when you spike your blood sugar just one time, it sets off an uncontrollable hunger for 2 to 3 days. That's right, 2 to 3 days, not just 2 or 3 hours. It's 2 or 3 days. So you may wake up the next day after cheating a little bit, oh man, I'm hungry. Well, that's because of this phenomenon. But if you keep eating in this way, that carbohydrate craving and what I call a carbohydrate addiction goes away. You know it, but if you cheat, you see it coming back right away. So a key that I use in my medical practice is Pure Nourish. Now, Pure Nourish is not only low glycemic, but it's gluten-free, it's soy-free, it's GMO-free, it's dairy-free. And it is the great combination of the good proteins, the good fats, and the good carbohydrates. I mean, this is wonderful. And you can just have this in the morning. I still have one every morning. I put 2 scoops in almond milk, and I have my other things. I put my Giving Greens in there. Some people want to use Power Boost, Beauty Boost, whatever. But you can just add it. But whatever you do, and then frozen fruit. And the reason I use some frozen fruit, it's tasty. It takes the boredom out of this, and you can make yourself a smoothie. But it's low glycemic. It will not spike your blood sugar. So I use it in my medical practice as a great tool as behavior modification. I can get my patients, if they do this once or twice a day, and then teach them to eat a snack or 2 along with a good low glycemic meal, they get to experience a low glycemic lifestyle right away. And yeah, we go through this for 5 to 10 days, and anybody that goes through it, I tell my patients, when I start phase 1, no bread, no flour, no rice, no cereal, no pasta, potatoes, or sugar. And I'll tell you what, they go in a cold shake right in front of me. And I mean, they know they're hooked on it, and they can't give it up. And but it's really key part of the Slenderiiz program. Now, exercise is the next thing, because modest aerobic exercise improves insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. But you don't want to be I don't want you to be a marathon runner. I don't want you to be a superstar. Simply walking briskly, 30 minutes, 5 days per week is what we want, but it could be biking, riding, swimming, hiking, tennis, anything that gets the body moving. The only thing the body cannot handle is inactivity. And so, but you want to build up to this. You don't want to just boom, be careful if you haven't been working out. But aerobic activity, again, is key to improving insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. Okay. Now, the medical literature is full of studies that show nutritional supplements improve insulin sensitivity. But the problem is they all study each nutrient separately. So there are studies of vitamin C improving it, vitamin E, grapeseed extract, magnesium, chromium, vanadium. Many of the minerals and antioxidants improve insulin sensitivity, but from a different mechanism. So what I find is if I can get my patients to make one of these lifestyle changes, doesn't matter, diet, exercise, or supplementation, I see improvement. If I can get them to do 2 of the 3, I see a little bit more improvement. If they do all 3, it's simply phenomenal what I see. And you're seeing it in all these transformation. So I recommend my patients take cellular nutrition and add it to the Slender X Accelerate, because this is part of a healthy lifestyle. I want my patients doing this every day of their life as part of a healthy lifestyle. So how do I define cellular nutrition? It's providing all the nutrients to the cell at optimal or advanced levels. Now, those are the levels that have been shown to provide a health benefit in our medical literature. Now, in this case, I'm concerned about improving insulin sensitivity. So everyone needs to consider adding nutritional supplementation. Optimals, you can add Tahitian noni juice, MOA, LIMO. If you want to really do it really well, add one of these juices of your choice to the optimals, and you'll have the best result. And so I really encourage that, because we got to look long-term here, okay? But everybody's interested in Slender X and Accelerate. And I must say, I used just those 3 lifestyle programs myself for the first 15 years of this, but the last probably about 13, 14 years, I've been using Slender X. And to explain to you, Slender X is a homeopathic drug, and it contains 10 different ingredients. 6 of those basically improve the release of fat from your fat cells. The reason they do it, and I've documented this in my medical practice, is it improves insulin sensitivity from another mechanism, okay? But then there are a couple that suppress your appetite, which is always good, and another 2 that increase your metabolism. So it really is a wonderful thing to add to your program. And then, of course, Accelerate, because this is stressful to make lifestyle changes. Accelerate contains high doses of vitamin B12 for energy, metabolism, along with biotin and the Ayurvedic herbs rhodiola and ashwagandha, which really calm and help the stress. They go together very, very well. But what I've seen in my medical practice is, yes, I saw great improvement with just the lifestyles. But when I started adding Slender X and Accelerate, I got the same clinical results in half the time. In other words, twice as fast, not only losing weight, but all the health benefits that I was looking for and improving insulin sensitivity, twice as fast. Well, I think most people like speed, and they want it done quick, not the drug speed, but the speed in losing weight. So what you do is, this is a great thing, and it's a great thing to come along, but you can't just rely on it. We have done this. We've done drugs, and everybody, I just lost weight. I didn't have to do anything. No, you want to make healthy lifestyles, because in the end, you want to do what I did in the clinical trials. With the program I just said to you that Partner Co. has based their weight loss program on, we've done 3 major clinical trials under the FDA. This is early on in my medical practice, before we even had Slender X. And we did them through the FDA under an IRB. In other words, this was done under the FDA guidelines. All 3 of these studies showed significant improvement in metabolic health. But what was interesting to me is the green line here. blood insulin levels actually dropped 50% within 12 weeks in every one of the studies because of what I've explained. If it's poor lifestyles that got us into all this trouble, maybe healthy lifestyles that improve insulin sensitivity can get us out. And so we literally were able to drop many of our patients back to normal. Well, once this blood insulin level started to come down, it just turned the clock back. You not only started releasing fat because now your storage hormone's gone down, but your blood pressure gets better. Your blood sugars stay much normal. Your blood lipids, your cholesterol and triglycerides and all that improve. And so this is the exciting thing to me. Now, people ask, well, can diabetics do it? Well, diabetics are further out here. So if I have a diabetic patient, now this is type 2, not type 1. I just tell my diabetic patients, do this program for 18 to 24 months to get optimal improvement. They're not going to improve as fast as someone that maybe has pre-diabetes, that's sitting back here just starting, to deal with that first 20, 25 pounds. But that's the science. That's what we're doing. That's why you're seeing transformation. So what are the health benefits of Slenderiiz? Healthier blood pressure, healthier lipid profile, healthier blood sugars. You establish your healthy weight because you begin releasing fat and you're not even trying. My patients come in to me and say, gee, Dr. Strand, what's so hard about never going hungry, feeling great, having more energy, seeing all your health parameters improving, and you begin losing weight and you're not trying? Now, that's what they tell me. I go, well, why aren't they trying? Because we're not relying on willpower. Trust me, you start eating this way, your appetite comes down naturally. The Slenderiiz helps, the Slender X helps that. We don't have to rely on willpower. We just want honesty. And that's why writing down everything that you do, how you do it, if you've got people and you have some accountability, you're going to do so much better. Now, I'm going to end this with, there's a concept called first step therapy. And as a physician, the medical community, all the meetings I go to, they always encourage us to offer our patients first step therapy. Well, what is that? Well, first step therapy is the opportunity to firmly establish healthy lifestyles that allows an individual to see these health improvements and maybe become less dependent on medication, and in many cases could even avoid medication. That's what we do. Then if it doesn't work, then we add our drugs. Now, I still prescribe medication, but I do it as a last resort, not a first choice. And that's there. Now, I told you my frustration with physicians in that, but in 2008, there was a consensus statement put out, a meeting by the American College of Endocrinology and the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists. Now, these are our diabetes specialists in the United States. And they basically came out and said, we need to be treating prediabetes as aggressively as we do diabetes. Why? Because by the time they become diabetic, it's too late. 80% of our diabetics, I say, were dying prematurely of cardiovascular disease in 1960, and they're still doing it in 2020. Trust me. But this came out, and they looked at the worldwide medical literature, just like I did. And here's what they said. The preferred treatment approach for all of the abnormalities is intensive lifestyle management, giving it safety and strength of evidence for its effectiveness, improving glycemia and reducing cardiovascular risk. And they even went on under lifestyle. Lifestyle modification should be the cornerstone of treatment. It should be attempted with all patients and reinforced in every visit with a healthcare professional. Lifestyle is a fundamental management approach that can effectively prevent or delay progression from prediabetes to diabetes. So there it is. But physicians aren't doing this. Why? They're too busy treating disease. That's why I'm talking to you, because you're the army of people that can spread this news and spread it. You become a walking billboard when you go through this because you lose weight. I mean, there's many people on this call that they know they're walking billboards and they're thrilled. I mean, no one minds losing some weight and seeing their health improve. But I want to share this because this is key. Partner Co. Slenderiiz program, in finishing, is not a diet, but instead a healthy lifestyle. Weight loss is great. However, keeping it off is priceless. So when my patient comes up to me and say, Dr. Strand, I've done your program or done this program, whatever, and I kept my weight off for 6 years, I stand up and applaud. because that's what's important. Weight loss is not the goal. Keeping it off and improving your health is. So I'm going to end with that.